What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso, joined as always by Connor Rogers. OTAs have started. It's almost Memorial Day weekend. We got a lot to talk about, including some debates about the Jets maybe being too young. CR, how you doing? How you feeling?
Good. It's just that time of year where it's the fact that Jamal Adams saying he wants to return to the Jets is the big piece of news. Kind of tells you where we're at.
Can he take Michael Clemens' spot in the roster? If he can, then bring him back.
Bulk up Jamal Adams and set the edge. Which is only one step, away from the role you've been playing, which is just a blitzing off-ball linebacker.
Aaron Maben, basically.
Yeah, it's almost disrespectful to Maben, but yeah, no, you're not wrong at all. No, things are good. Got to step away this weekend a little bit. It was, and you were there, so this must feel even wild to you. Like, I can't believe it's been 1 year since I got married. I feel like I blinked and this year went by. I don't know if it was the Aaron Rodgers post-game quotes that made it feel like that time capsule or what it was, but it flew by. So stepped away for a couple of days. Happy to be back. I'm very deep in watching quarterbacks for next year, which is very interesting because it feels like it could be relevant to the Jets. We'll see. We'll cross that bridge when it gets there, but it always is a little bit different for me when I'm watching quarterbacks just for my draft job at NBC and NFL Stock Exchange versus when I could be watching them potentially for a Jets year. So it's you always kind of keep that in the back of your mind. But other than that, I love it. I adore this time of year and I'm enjoying it a lot.
Amen. I always look forward to Memorial Day weekend, even if it's not going to be nice weather out. Just get me into the summer.
Well, this is a rare one with the Knicks, right?
Yes,
very rare.
Yes. Tonight, baby. That's actually, we're recording early in the day. Usually we record at night, but we got to watch the Knicks. And also check out our Discord show that hit last night. An hour and 10 minutes of Nick chatter.
That's amazing.
Thank you for Chris and Nick for hopping on. So OTAs are going on. I feel like we have a version of this debate every year, but I do think it's worth talking about, especially with a veteran. I'll call it a veteran quarterback because he is. We're not watching rookie quarterback stats. No. What, if anything, matters during these days? What is it worth looking out for beyond the fun clips of Justin Fields bombing a couple to Garrett Wilson or Xavier Gibson? It seems like attendance has been strong. The Jets have just about everyone they need under contract. Beyond that, over these few days, as a fan, what should you care about? And more importantly, what should you not care about?
It's interesting, right? Because it's not that. And I don't blame beat writers. We were joking about this with Zach in the Discord. I don't blame beat writers for tracking stats because honestly, fans ask for them. It drives engagement, and it's not like clickbait engagement. Like a lot of people like to interact with stats. The lack of, for those guys it matters that are there, but for people that aren't there, we don't go to OTAs, obviously.
Yeah.
The lack of you could be 11 to 12 one day, but it's like, oh, cool, I threw four of those were manufactured touches, a screen or a shallow crosser or anything like that. So the context is important, and sometimes why the stats don't matter. I think internally, what really matters to somebody like a quarterback in a new environment, and you nailed it. Fields has started 44 games. We're not going to treat him like a rookie. That's a pretty good sample size now of experience in the NFL, especially at two different stops with multiple different offensive coordinators over the years. For a guy like that, it's learning timing. It's learning some wide receivers like different routes thrown differently, where they like the ball. Whether they like a fastball, they like a low ball, they like to extend. Some guys, a catch and run ball is really important, and we keep hammering that it's going to be really vital in this offense because you would imagine that one of Engstrand's goals is developing a quarterback friendly-ish offense, and really just what that means is that screens can kind of help the pass game, and yards after the catch can help the offense as a whole. So kind of developing the nuances of that, and also a new offensive line in front of him and an offensive line that really hopes to build some chemistry starting now rather than getting into camp. And camp is so weird in this CBA era. It's something I kind of, badger Bart and Willie with behind the scenes all the time. I'm like, what was it like, in this era for you? And this, and they, those guys in that era are really honest. The lack of practice has just changed how ramping up is now in the NFL. And that's really important. OTAs matter. I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, OTAs don't matter. And the Rodgers minicamp storyline had a life of its own last year for a variety of reasons, but OTAs as a whole matter because, especially for a new coach and a lot of new players and young players, because you'd rather get that timing down and learn verbiage and things with the new staff now, where when you get into camp and if you eventually get pads on, you're kind of rocking and rolling a little bit rather than doing all of that. And then it's like, our last week of pads, we feel like we're making progress. Oh, now we're live bullets are flying. We're under the lights. We had to fly across the country to play San Francisco week 1, right? Like, so that's why OTAs do matter. Just because they're not wearing pads, there are a lot of really important things from a mental and timing aspect of everybody kind of getting on the same page.
In particular, I like the offensive line getting time together, lining up together, communicating like how they're going to talk up front, and also the running backs getting comfortable in a new running scheme and like their pacing and when they're going to cut and when to be patient and when not to be patient. And with Fields and Wilson, I'm sure it's got to be nice for them. Obviously, they have a history of playing together to kind of pick up where they left off and, see what new things each other have added to their repertoire. So I think offensively, in particular, it can be really positive for the Jets, especially with a young play caller. Steve Wilkes has done this for a million years. Yeah. He's a seasoned veteran, but with Engstrand, every moment counts, right? And him kind of asserting his self and his personality over that offense and how that goes hand in hand with Fields and how they communicate in and out of the huddle. Every second they can get doing that is so important. I think defensively, I think they're going to be fine, and they're not going to probably do anything too radical. They're not going to be testing anything crazy with any of the veterans, but you feel like Aaron Glenn, Steve Wilkes, like, maybe they mess around with a few things, but we're not going to like get a crazy leak like, oh, actually they are playing Stevens at safety, or they're like running like this. We're not going to see any of that, maybe till the summer, if at all. So I think it's a positive thing. There's a good new positive, serious energy, I'll call it, around the Jets without overdoing it. I will say every young quarterback generally has good stats at OTAs, except for Zach Wilson, who somehow would go like 3 for 17 in OTAs, and we'd be like,
Drake May threw 4 picks yesterday.
That's true. So that's true. And listen, you never know. I love to pick on Drake May a ton, but I don't want to.
He's going to be fine.
I think he'll be fine. I hope he's not fine on the field, but we'll see. Now, this dovetails into what I thought was an interesting back and forth in our Discord, and we're going to answer a bunch of more like lighter rapid fire questions in War Room this week. There's basically a little back and forth, and not in a mean way. It was a good spirited conversation between JP Waxer and SJG about the youth on the Jets roster. This is now one of the youngest rosters in the NFL. And I think the question was like, wouldn't this group benefit from more of a Morgan Moses and CJ Mosley type around? Show the young guys how it's done. Are you too young everywhere where you don't have a couple guys who have done this for 10, 11 years who can set the example day to day on the field? And does that matter? Or is that something the coaching staff takes on?
Right.
I played. I came from an organization that turned it around. Steve Wilkes, I've been a defensive coordinator and interim head coach in 17 different places. We're going to count on those guys to bring it. And also, like you said, Fields has started over 40 games in the NFL. Even guys like Garrett, Sauce, and Brees, like they've been through 3 full seasons and seen a lot in their tenure where you're hoping them, to a lesser extent, guys like Quincy and Quinnen and Sherwood. Yeah, like Quinnen's he's got his big contract. He's been here. So does that matter? Is it going to be a problem for the Jets? And, I was batting this around on Twitter yesterday, like people always like to ask this, like who should the Jets captains be or who will they be? And you never know. There's always going to be someone from special teams thrown in there.
Let's do the 5 right now.
Yeah. So I said Fields. I hope it's going to be Fields. I said Garrett, which a lot of people didn't agree with, but I think he'll have a chance, especially if he gets paid with the way he carries himself and seems to just care to a degree that I didn't see from everyone last year.
Right.
That could elevate Quinnen, because I do hope it has to be Quinnen at this point.
It does.
I said Sherwood because I just kind of feel like what I saw from one Jets drive and with him getting paid and with him getting voted on team MVP last year by his peers, I just think there's a lane for him to do that. And that if the 5th isn't going to be Chris Banjo picks his favorite gunner, do you look at the offensive line? Do you look at Quincy? Do you look at Sauce? I don't know. Where does your head go as some candidates for that? Jermaine Johnson's another name that gets thrown around.
So I think we are 1 year away for Jermaine. And I think if he didn't get hurt last year, it would be a lot closer of a call. But I think we're 1 year. I think and I want to be fair to Jermaine, I think it's really hard to take on an elevated leadership role while you're also trying to take care of yourself. And he's going through just a grueling rehabilitation period with that Achilles. So now DNA mindset, set the example, set the tone. Like, we don't like to get bullied. Jermaine Johnson is at the top of the list on this roster. So I think we're 1 year away from Jermaine being captain. I would say, let's get what should be the 2 layups out of the way, Quinnen and Fields. Quinnen is not only one of the stars of the defense, but he's the most tenured.
Drafted in 2018 somehow.
He turns
2019 or whatever.
He turns 28 this season.
That's crazy.
And he wasn't an old prospect.
No, he was young.
So the good thing is defensive tackles. I mean, Calais Campbell's going to be like 40 and still dominating. I'm not saying Quinnen will do that, but Quinnen could be really good for a really long time. I would actually say John Simpson is the other offensive captain. And you're right. The weird one is, like, is there a special teams captain?
Irv Charles rubbing it in our face.
One last Irv Charles.
They signed Chris Boyd for special teams reasons,
who almost beat up his coach on the sideline last playoffs.
And these names sound silly, but they always pick a special teams guy. It's not going to be the kicker or punter because they're going to be rookies, probably.
It's not. You're right. So it has to be some kind of gunner coverage guy.
Xavier Gibson.
My goodness, he might get. The problem is, like, if you're on the line of being cut at some point,
cut or captain.
Year, cut or captain, exactly. All right, so let's say the 5th is a special teams player that we don't know how that's going to shake out. That's just a wild card we won't pick. Yeah, I'd say Fields, Simpson, Quinnen, and then I think the last defensive one is between Michael Carter and Sherwood.
Yep,
because Carter is one of the smarter players on the team. You know, he plays even when he's hurt. He does things the right way. He is very level-headed, but Sherwood, they just gave a big contract to, and the new staff clearly watched the tape and, liked the person as well, and they have big expectations for him. And the thing with Sherwood that you can kind of talk yourself into, too, is, like, this guy can be the captain for the next 3 to 4 years.
And they call him the quarterback of the defense. That was the first thing they said when they signed him.
And he learned behind Mosley for years, so it feels like it'd been building towards this. Yeah, my final would be Quinnen, prediction-wise, Quinnen, Sherwood, Simpson, and Fields.
Now, is it problematic at all that neither of us even mentioned Sauce? We're talking about this guy being the highest paid corner in the NFL. He's been here 3 years, all pro twice. Like, that is nothing to sneeze at. I know, he didn't have the best year last year. Still pretty goddamn good.
Right.
Is it a thing that we didn't mention the guy that talent-wise is the best player on the defense and could be the best player on the team and could be the highest paid player on the team, pending what happens the next few months?
I almost feel like this first year, Glenn will pull you're a little tougher on your kids when you're the coach.
Yep.
I think we're going to get, and I would advocate for this. I think Glenn is going to challenge Sauce in ways that he won't challenge everyone else. And I think defaulting to Sauce being a captain just because he's one of the best players on the team, I don't think Glenn will do that. So, yeah, I don't know if it's problematic. You definitely would prefer that Sauce is just undeniably going to be a captain. But I think Glenn is going to watch all 3 years of Sauce tape and be like, yeah, I have way bigger expectations from this guy than what he showed last year because of what he showed the first 2 years. And I think he'll push him in a different way than he pushes other guys.
I think it's a good shout. They could use this as an opportunity to develop that relationship and maximize what he thinks he can get out of him in his scheme. Now,
by the way, you made a really interesting comment before that I agree with.